Hello, it's Coco, and this week I wanted to talk with you about how patriarchy is the keystone inequality that capitalism and all systems of exploitation and supremacy require and rely upon to maintain social dominance, as this is just how the world works. It's not just how the world works. These are all artificial systems that have been constructed over millennia, and that we have the very real opportunity to dismantle and create new systems that would probably ensure that the earth remains habitable and that humanity continues on. And heck, we might even find a way to be happy, a lot happier than we are now. So that's what I want to talk about in this video. Thanks for being here. If you prefer to read these type of ideas, I have this all up in an article at my Substack, powerculturecoco.substack.com, linked below. And I'm glad you're here. Let's get into it. So polling is indicating that this election cycle will probably see the largest gender gap in history, with more men voting for Trump and MAGA and patriarchy is the only way that God wants us to live kind of vibe. And then more women voting for VP Harris and Governor Walz and Democratic down the line, because women like myself are like, hey, I'm a whole human being, entitled to sovereignty and decision-making and bodily autonomy, just like every man. So it's apparently very progressive to think that way, which is straight up disturbing, but we're on a precipice of change, baby. But yeah, it's actually kind of surprising that this is such a large gender gap, especially the New York Times recently showed polls that it's even like this gap exists amongst Gen Z. And like, I'm a millennial, but from what I've gathered from Gen Z's reputation is like they're very social justice or death. So it was kind of surprising to see that they were still that the young men are so vulnerable to the patriarchal conditioning when they've been known for dismantling everything. But fret not. We can always change our minds, right? Yeah, sorry, I'm losing my notes. All right, so yeah, even kings of capitalism are getting in on this gender war, with men like Elon Musk and hillbilly venture capitalist J.D. Vance coming out and just really fear-mongering over the existence of child-free, autonomous women that are single and living a good life. Full disclosure, I am a child-free single woman in my 30s, and I have not contributed to our birth rate. So I am a part of the fall of civilization that Elon Musk is very, very, very concerned about. And you know what? They're fear-mongering about the population decline. It's not a threat to civilization itself, but it is a direct threat to capitalism for all sorts of reasons. And they all go back to patriarchy, right? But two of these main reasons that single women that don't participate in marriage and birthing babies are a problem is, first and foremost, in America, we don't really have a social safety net. There are very limited resources, and they're patchy, right? Some states and some communities have some programs for various things, but as a whole, our nation has just an abomination of social support. Think about it. We're the only industrialized country that doesn't have Medicare for all. That healthcare is pay to play. And it's not just in healthcare, it's in all care, child care, elderly care, community organizing in general. All of this falls on women. Women are America's social safety net. And so when women withdraw from unequal marriages or partnership with men that do not reciprocate care in any meaningful way, because they're like, this isn't like a true partnership, this is you extracting labor to make a good life from me and then not providing anything meaningful in return, right? What's the problem? Populations get older, who's going to take care of the elderly? Well, if you don't have a wife to take care of your parents, it means a man's going to have to do it. And they really, they don't enjoy that. So that's one of the direct threats to capitalism. Less access to free labor from women to take care of the requirements of life, right? And the second direct threat to capitalism that single childless women represent is that capitalism and the limited social safety nets that we have, like Social Security, right? They are all based on the assumption that every generation will grow in size. So Social Security only works by borrowing against the future under the assumption that every generation will grow in size. And so as women are like, wow, it looks like really too stressful and unhappy to be able to do a family. I can't economically do it. I don't have the support. I can't be one woman supporting the lives and welfare of a dozen people and working full time. Like it's too much, right? Well, that's a big problem because our social systems borrow against future generations to pay for things now. And like, listen, I don't know how to reform Social Security at this point in time to make it a better and different system, but we absolutely can. So those are two reasons why it is a direct threat to capitalism when women refuse to, when it's not, I know so many women that would love to have families and like, it's just the resources, it's not possible, right? But we bear the brunt of blame for the fall of civilization. Yeah, because in the patriarchal worldview, women are expected to meet all human needs without needing anything in return, right? And it's necessary because none of our social systems were designed with the mandate to meet the needs of human life, right? Does the American economy exist to support the needs of human life? Or does human life exist to support the needs of the American economy? Think about it, seriously. And I think if you like sit and reflect for a second, you'll be like, no, my entire life I've been told that I need to become this most optimized cog to fit into capitalism and compete as hard as I can. So it's all about us supporting the needs of the economy, not the economy supporting the needs of people through like generating enough resources, which America has, to do socialized healthcare for all, right? And so these are choices and it's not great, right? So without women's endless giving and sacrifice and labor, capitalism can't sustain itself the way it does currently. And so patriarchy is absolutely critical to maintaining capitalism as the hegemonic system that we all have to function under. And this is why they're rescinding our rights. This is why, you're hearing more and more men online being like, should women be allowed to vote? I don't think so. I think a man should vote for the household and like crazy stuff like that. JD Vance has come out and said that he thinks families should get extra votes for their kids, with the implication that the men would vote based on how many kids they have, because it's that patriarchal worldview where the man owns the household, and it's just, I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's all garbage. So patriarchy, sorry, gotta get grounded again. So patriarchy is the keystone inequality, right? That capitalism requires, that all systems require. And it's the keystone because we are indoctrinated from birth to develop these core beliefs, which is like, the core belief is the thought beneath the thought, right? It is the subconscious assumptions that are built within us from what we are exposed to as normalized dynamics throughout our childhood, right? And our communities, our cultural traditions, and media narratives as well, right? So it's what we are bombarded with explicitly and implicitly that build these belief systems within us. So it's the thought beneath the thought, and it filters everything we perceive through this subconscious belief, and then that makes the thought that we're having, right? So patriarchy conditions us into a social logic, an expectation for supremacy-based relationships where there is a dominant role and a subservient role. And that those forced into subservient roles have to perform and labor and do things for the benefit of the dominant role. And that is natural, that extraction is natural. Because that's not a partnership where it's, I play to my strengths and this is my wheelhouse, and you play to your strengths and you have your wheelhouse, and it's like a circle that we feed each other. No, this is a top-bottom extraction because there's no meaningful reciprocity for the labor and resources that the subservient role is providing to the dominant role. So, right, in patriarchal households, which, most of us, that's the default, right? You have women who are responsible for all or most domestic labor, right? So women are doing the day-to-day labor to make life happen, and men are receiving it. So that's the cooking every day, the cleaning, the dishes, the managing the kids so that you proactively are aware of all of their needs and that their vaccines are up to date, and et cetera, et cetera. And then men get a really, they'll be like, I clean the gutters once a quarter, I contribute. And it's like, all right, so what's that, a 4-hour task that you do every 3 months versus the 4 hours that she does every single day to keep the household functioning. So that's what I mean about the unreciprocated care. And that's not even talking about all the emotional labor and what's not. Cool. So in this section, I'm going to outline, this is kind of big, the key aspects of patriarchal conditioning, right? I'm going to outline them, and with the understanding that capitalism and all systems of extraction require this conditioning and the core belief within us, the thought beneath the thought, to maintain the social logic that exploitation is social order and that true equality is anarchy. Because it's not, well, not anarchy in a bad way. Cool. Number 1, patriarchy conditions supremacy hierarchy at the intimate family level, with partnership being defined by submissive and dominant roles, like we just talked about. To make this a little less wordy, know that when I say men are masculine, I'm talking about dominant role. And when I say woman or feminine, I'm talking about subservient role. But as we go through, you'll be able to see how these dynamics are leveraged and replicated within capitalism at large. And that may not be gendered. That could be done through, you can think of that as like collective identities. So like class, where it'd be like upper class is dominant, middle class and lower class are subservient. Okay, cool. All right. So the dominant masculine role is defined by entitlement to extraction and the will to impose perceptions of belief upon the woman's subservient role, funneling the woman's subservient role's social identity through those imposed beliefs, right? So as we were saying, men feel entitled to receive a lot of labor from women every single day. They are entitled to extract that. They are conditioned to believe. And then on top of that, men are conditioned to believe that they have the authority to decide what is the virtue of femininity as a social role. So that's where you see men that come out and say, like, you know, femininity, it's submissive, it never challenges men, it's soft, it's all about serving his emotional needs and taking pride and labor for him, right? That's seen, they feel entitled to say that's what being a woman means. And like, no, you're not a woman, get out of here. You don't, get out of here. Not your, shoot. You don't define our identity, shoot. Can you tell that I've experienced patriarchal dynamics in my own life? Sorry. All right, 3. Patriarchy conditions subservient role women to be defined by sacrifice and imposed limitations as standards of virtue, right? So when patriarchal men are out here being like, you know, a good woman is a modest woman. She doesn't leave the house without her man, not after dark. She would never, ever consider socializing without her husband. Well, that's saying that modesty is defined as sacrifice of social connection, independent social connection, and sacrifice of sovereignty. That's all modest. So then that becomes a feminine virtue that men are prescribing to women, when really it's just a standard of limitation that they would never accept in their own lives. That's all about ownership. 4. Patriarchy demolishes core expectation for mutual benefit, mutual respect, and mutual quality of life at the foundational home raising level. I don't know if you saw that Reddit thread, it was a while ago, where basically they were talking about a couple broke up and the guy was really surprised by it. And because when he was talking about it, he's like, yeah, I knew she was unhappy, but I thought it was a tolerable level of permanent unhappiness. So that's what I mean, where men are conditioned like, yeah, I'm not going to change. Like we could fix these relationship dynamics where you feel I take advantage of you, but I feel like you'll just like accept it if I just pretend that I care. And like, I do kind of care, but like not enough to change my behaviors. And I thought I could get away with that indefinitely because it's a tolerable level of permanent unhappiness. So that's what I'm getting at with demolishes core expectations for mutual benefit, mutual respect, mutual quality of life. That's patriarchal conditioning. 5. Patriarchy conditions expectations for men to exploit women to benefit from unpaid labor, unreciprocated care, and reproduction value. I think that's pretty clear. 6. Patriarchy conditions men to focus their attention and energy on self, and conditions women to focus their attention and energy upon serving others, right? And 7, to internally justify this intentional subjugation and exploitation, men are conditioned to believe that women are subordinate and inferior creatures that cannot be trusted with free will or respected as independently capable human beings. This is important. You know, this comes in where a lot of men are like, oh, women are so, they're just not rational. They have all these emotions, blah, blah, blah. Because it kind of teaches the idea that empathy isn't rational, and that's absolutely not true. A lack of empathy doesn't mean that you're being logical. Because to truly have a grasp on logic and rationality, you have to have a systems level intelligence. And if you feel that all expressions of emotion and whatnot are irrational, then you cannot have a systems level intelligence of the family as a system. You cannot be a good leader because you do not understand and have the emotional intelligence to perceive and respect each member of the family as an autonomous being with unique feelings that are just as valid as anybody else's, right? So it's very diminishing. But yeah, that's all done to just justify exploitation. Cool. 8. Patriarchy conditions an attitude of incrimination against women amongst men and women alike through patterns of cultural ridicule, devaluing, and erasure. So it conditions us all to culturally demean spheres of domestic labor and femininity, things that we attribute to femininity, to further psychologically disempower women, and to sow more seeds of incrimination towards anything that's feminine coded. So like seeds of incrimination, one way to see this is like, how rude are we culturally to things that teenage girls like, right? How culturally acceptable is it to be ridiculously rude to Taylor Swift fans, right? We saw that with, last season in the NFL, everyone was like making fun of Swifties for being like, oh, I care about the NFL now. And like, what a mistake, because they're an economic juggernaut. The NFL was like, no, keep those $50 coming. But then so many men were just like, you're not a real fan. Attitude of incrimination. They don't want to be associated. They need to devalue and be like, you're not allowed to like what I like because you're not sophisticated like me, and blah, 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 blah. So that's where we see attitudes of incrimination play out. Additionally, patriarchy conditions a reciprocal overinflation and valuation of masculine coded spheres of labor, interests, and pursuits, with the aim of maximizing attention and resources directed to men and minimizing access to attention and resources for women. This is to make it so that it's socially logical for a woman to want to attach herself to a man to access these resources and attention, without the men having to do anything to be worthy of partnership. Once again, all about overinflating the presence of masculinity and devaluing the existence and presence of femininity. Okay. Next, patriarchy conditions an expectation that men should benefit from the presence of a woman, and that a woman must justify her presence before a man by performing for his benefit, right? And whether that's just about like being pretty so he wants to stare at you, like appealing to the male gaze, or you're in a conference meeting at work and the expectation that the woman is the one that's meant to get the coffees and teas and set up some snacks for all the boys, even though she's there to equally participate in the meeting, right? Gets insidious like that. Patriarchy conditions expectations that men are entitled to benefit from women without ever having to cultivate any meaningful knowledge of her needs or desires. Conditions expectations that men are entitled to receive anticipatory care, attention, and resources and support from women without men ever having to do the work of getting to know their own selves, right? Whether that's a meaningful understanding of their own core beliefs, emotional wounds, triggers, patterns of behavior. They feel like, I don't need to understand this about myself, but I am entitled to receive anticipatory care from a woman. Not good. Conditions expectations that men are not responsible to cultivate any knowledge, understanding, respect, or routines of care towards women, right? And just to make it like really explicit, right? Would a man ever feel that way about his car, right? That a man was entitled to receive a car that met all of his transportation needs and status expression desires, right? Dream car, Lambo, right? That he's entitled to receive this car, and that he would never have to cultivate a meaningful, proactive understanding of how to take care of it when it needs to have its oil changed and whatever Lambos need to run good. Like, no, that would make no sense. If he just drove it endlessly, never changed the oil, he would not be surprised that his Lambo busted on him. And yet they have these expectations in meaningful relationships with women. Not good that they respect items more than women. I don't like it. let's keep on rolling. So all of these subconscious conditionings are leveraged to create resigned acceptance, blindness, and justification for exploitive relationships throughout all of society, right? And men are just like, I'm on autopilot. I don't even see everything that I receive because I am socially conditioned. Blah, 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 blah. Cool, bro. You're an adult man now. Go to therapy. Get a journal. Learn how to start expanding your consciousness to be more aware of these things. Or don't bitch and moan when you don't have partnership. Anyway, these subconscious conditionings that patriarchy instills that are leveraged to support capitalism and all sorts of wrongness throughout all realms, well, it creates major ingrained barriers to creating mutually beneficial social structures that honor human life by prioritizing meeting human needs as the mandate for why these systems exist. Like I said earlier, does the American economy exist to support human life, or does human life exist to support the American economy? We can change things to make the mandate to meet all basic human needs. And once those are food and shelter all met, well, then we can have capitalism for extras. Totally. Like that would be a path forward, right? But patriarchal indoctrination is like, I don't want anyone to get anything that feel like they're taking away from me because I pay taxes. And it's like, contribute, dude, because they're so ingrained that it's all competition and exploitation, that cooperation is for wusses and that's leaving money on the table, blah, blah, blah. These are all patriarchal conditionings because it all assumes that you own a woman to make life happen for you and that you are just here to compete. And we see that in all of our systems, and it's bad. So patriarchy conditions us to believe that artificial systems of exploitation are natural and thus irrefutable and unchangeable, when in reality, these are all artificial systems that we have constructed. And really, nature flows, like every single ecosystem has a twofold mandate, that there must be a balance between competition and cooperation. That is how all life grows and sustains itself. Artificial systems of exploitation, like patriarchy, replace cooperation with exploitation. So it's just competition and exploitation. And that erodes what even competition alone can accomplish, because eventually you destroy your population and your environment and everyone dies, which we're seeing now, right? Women withdrawing from men is a sign that you're destroying your own population through radical exploitation that is not sustainable. And we just had the hottest summer on record again for like the third or fourth year in a row, where it's just hotter and hotter. Yeah, we're literally destroying our environment and ensuring that humanity's in a death spiral and every other living creature because we hate the concept of cooperation so much. And that's because of patriarchy. And finally, the totality of this imbalance that patriarchy instills and all systems of exploitation rely upon, it all results in states of arrested development. Think Peter Pan syndrome and narcissistic personality orientations, right? And that ends up in a loss of a mature vision for humanity, for civilization, for what we can do and how we should live, right? There's no mature vision there. And that's not good, Bob. So yeah, I'm gonna leave you with this thought. Do you genuinely believe that capitalism could exist without patriarchy being our default organization for home life, partnership, and all social structures? Because I do not. So I think that is why we're seeing American misogyny as the animating force of this election cycle, and why MAGA peeps are like, take away all women's rights. She needs to be owned by her father and sold to a husband. Because they know. Because on some level they know. As we dismantle patriarchy within our own selves and act accordingly and seek to dismantle patriarchy and standards of exploitation as the way of life, all of these systems fall. And honestly, it can't come soon enough, because if we want humanity to have a future, we need to bring cooperation back to the forefront of all of our social systems as the mandate for their existence, not a side thought that that's women's work. Because if it's just women's work, then we're all gonna die. Cool. So if you like this, please give me a like and subscribe. I'm gonna be posting these weekly, and every week I am publishing more articles about this kind of exploration of supremacy and how we can dismantle it as ways of life. I'm on socials at Coco Has Ideas, TikTok, Instagram, and my Substack is powerculturecoco.substack.com. I'm Coco, and thanks for being here. I love you, sweet baby angels. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next week.